Are you trying to figure out what is next for your watch collection? I found that looking at the holdings of other watch enthusiasts can help me identify watches I might want to add to my collection. 2022 was a strange year for my watch collection. Let me review my activities over the past year and the current state of my collection in hopes that it may help you decide what is next in your adventures in watches. Let me jump right into reviewing my watch collection, and while doing so, relate my activities and why I think 2022 was a bit of an uncharacteristic year in watches, at least for me. If you want to learn more about any of the watches I discuss, you can find reviews of them on my channel. If you find this video helpful, please consider using the super thanks button just below to help offset the costs of bringing you videos like this. By the way, you can skip to specific watches by using the chapters feature. Here we go. Although I didn't add any watches to my collection in 2022, I did finally finish the restoration of my Tiffany branded Patek Philippe watch. It needed a new strap, so I had two bespoke straps made for this watch by a French leatherworks company. This is a 100-year-old gold watch given to my great uncle by his mother back in 1927. I was fortunate enough to have this watch passed down to me through my father. The restoration of this watch was a multi-year activity involving evaluation by Patek Philippe in Geneva and discussions with several independent watchmakers. I'll leave a link to the playlist where I chronicle all these efforts at the end of this video. Due to the odd lug dimensions and my wrist size, I decided to go with a custom strap maker. I ordered a brown leather strap for more casual events, although I'm not sure how I will feel wearing such a watch in an informal setting. My main goal was to get a black leather strap for formal attire. The results of all this restoration work is fantastic and well worth the cost, as I now have a beautiful watch with connection to several generations of my family. The watch runs great and looks even better. I'm so happy that I can wear a watch which reminds me of the ancestors who shared in its enjoyment. Believe it or not, I did not add any watches to my collection this year, the first such year since I started collecting watches. The two straps for my Patek Philippe watch were the only additions I made. However, as I explained in a recent video, watch enthusiasts don't have to continually acquire watches to enjoy this hobby. We can experience a lot of watches without actually buying them. I'll leave a link to this video in the description so you can easily find it. This past year, I've been able to review in hand microbrand watches, several luxury watches from Germany, a few Swiss watches, and even some oddball watches. I also visited many watch boutiques and watch exhibitions. Hence, my desire to experience new watches has been well satisfied. That does not mean that I'm not considering new acquisitions to my collection. In fact, let me next tell you about a purchase I'm seriously considering. This is the Zelos Horizons GMT, which I purchased back in 2019. This is the initial version of this model released by Zelos. In 2020, they released an updated version with a few enhancements. I didn't upgrade for a few reasons, which I explained in a video. I'll leave a link to that one in the description also. I certainly enjoy wearing this Zelos GMT. I especially like the combination of green dial and tinted stainless steel bezel, which pairs well with this NATO. It is definitely a fun watch to wear and can be dressed up with a simple brown leather strap. However, I am considering selling this watch in favor of a Traveler's GMT. I recently made a survey of true or Traveler's GMT watches under $4,000 US. This Horizons is an office GMT. What's the difference? I'll leave a link to my video at the end so you can learn about GMTs and see my list of Traveler's GMT watches. Why my interest in this upgrade? I'm not one who constantly travels between time zones. I just think that a Traveler's GMT demonstrates better the engineering aspects that I love so much in mechanical watches. I'll be sure to publish a video once I complete this switch, so stay tuned and subscribe so you don't miss out. Another green dial watch in my collection is the Seiko Alpinist. This is the Seiko SARB 017, which was discontinued a couple years ago and replaced by a newer series of watches in the Prospex line. There is the SPB 121, SPB 123, SPB 157, SPB 117, and probably a few others. I haven't been tracking all of these new Alpinists very much. Most of these new models seem to be priced around $700. I'm extremely happy that I was able to get my SARB 017 from the Japan market when it was available, and at half the price of these newer models. I do like the fact that mine doesn't have the Cyclops date window, like the newer Alpinist models. Overall, I find this older model has a better aesthetics. Instead of the supplied strap, which was not very good, I usually wear it on this brown leather crown and buckle chevron strap. I also have the strap code Jubilee bracelet, but rarely use it. The only downside of this watch, if you're a perfectionist like me, is that the inner rotating compass bezel will tend to move as you wear the watch. But I've turned that aspect into a game, where I see how much the bezel has rotated during the day. This is a great watch to wear, especially on those lazy Sundays, or any other day. This watch is definitely a keeper for me. Next, I want to show you the Ball Trainmaster Standard Time 135th Anniversary Watch. This is a limited edition watch that Ball released back in 2018. Mine is number 28 out of 1,000 pieces. If you're familiar with Ball watches, you know that they use tritium gas tubes for low light illumination. Although not very potent, they glow without needing any charging from a light source. That was one of the attributes that interested me in this watch. However, I was drawn more by the Ball history and the railroad aesthetics of this watch. The enamel dial and font of the hour indices is suggestive of both the large clocks from train stations and the pocket watches used by train conductors. There are also those little touches such as the RR counterbalance on the second hand and the tiny ball and company used to make up the 7 o'clock hour numeral. This is a very stylish watch that goes well with business casual attire with a crisp dial and a multi-part bracelet, a watch that will certainly provide lots of wrist appeal. A couple of years ago, I wanted to dip a toe into vintage watches. After some consideration, I decided that I would seek a watch that my father might have worn during his service in World War II. Instead of the more popular A11 watches of that era, I thought it would have been more likely that my father wore an Ordnance Department watch. After a short research, I was able to acquire this 1944 Elgin Ord Department watch. It ran great, so I didn't bother to have it serviced. However, the original canvas strap was in poor condition and didn't fit me. I decided to get this custom-made Bund strap as I thought it would offset the relatively small size of this watch and appear better on my larger wrist. I'll leave a link to a playlist in the description in which I chronicle my search for this watch and strap. The result is so pleasing that I have taken to wearing this watch more often than I originally planned. I love the look of the watch and how it allows me to pay tribute to not only my father, but all those who serve. This is a watch that never fails to draw comments when I wear it, and one that will be in my collection forever. Like the World War II Elgin Ordnance Department watch I just described, I have a few watches which I consider as sentimental items. One of these is this Rolex Oyster Perpetual Datejust from 1975. It was purchased by a relative and then passed down to me through my father. Unfortunately, this is a 30mm watch, which was considered at the time of purchase a men's medium-sized watch, and much too small for my wrist. I tried to convince my wife to use this watch, but she is resistant. Regardless of whether anyone wears it, this is a watch I will keep, if only for the memories it brings me. If you are a regular to my channel, you know that a couple of years ago, I went on a quest to buy my first mid-tier luxury watch. By the way, if you're not a regular viewer, now would be a good time to subscribe and hit that like button so that additional watch enthusiasts will get to see this video. I did chronicle my search over several videos and put them into a playlist, which I'll link in the description below. I settled on the Tudor BlackBay 58. I love the, can I say, conservative look of this dive watch. It doesn't look like a tool watch, which allows it to be worn in many scenarios. The dimensions are just about perfect for my wrist, and the build quality is extremely high. Since my purchase, Tudor has launched several varieties of this watch, perhaps to leverage the popularity of the original. In addition to a couple of different colorways, they've released models in bronze, silver, and gold. I think the original model I have is still the best, but that's just my personal opinion. Like my foray into vintage watches, I became curious about some low-priced Homage watches. I wanted to see how they fared against the original, after which they were designed. I purchased this Pagani design BlackBay 58 Homage, a watch that cost me just $100. I selected it to compare to the original BlackBay 58 I just discussed. I compared many aspects of these watches, from the case to the dial to the bezel and even the bracelets. Of course, the Pagani is no real substitute for the BlackBay 58. However, I found it interesting to see how well it repeated many of the Tudor style elements and where it completely departed. I now use the Pagani as a knockaround watch, something that looks stylish and for which I don't care what happens to it. One of the first watches I purchased as a watch collector was the Seagull 1963. I have always been confused by the maker of this watch. Rather, I should say the makers of Seagull. I say this because there seems to be several manufacturers of watches that use the Seagull name. I could be wrong about that, but I've seen them offered on different companies who claim to be the manufacturer. Regardless, I accept this watch for what it is: a reproduction, reissue, or whatever of the original Chinese aviation chronograph developed for the People's Liberation Army Air Force. This is another fun watch to wear and pairs well with this Hadley Roma brown olive strap. I really have no use for a chronograph, but wearing a watch from China, and one that is linked to the history of the country, and that has a display case back so that you can see the movement and workings of the chronograph, is fun and stimulus for conversation. Everyone needs a beater watch, a watch in which, if scratched or dented or even destroyed beyond repair, one would not be terribly troubled. These are watches we tend to wear in rough conditions where they might get damaged, such as on a sandy beach or digging in the fields. For me, my beater watch is the Seiko Samurai, the Prospex SRPB55. I've taken this watch on many trips to the beach and have worn it while working around the house. A few years ago, this watch started to act erratic, losing time and even stopping while I was wearing it. Since it was a beater watch, I decided to open it up and see if I could determine the issue. I ended up replacing the entire movement and a few other components to boot. I chronicled these efforts in a playlist, to which I'll leave a link at the end of this video. You may find it interesting and helpful, and give you the confidence and try your own hand at working on watches. Although I enjoy wearing the Seiko Samurai I just discussed to the beach or pool, I wanted another summertime watch. I found the Ilander automatic diver, reference ISL 008, to be a great selection. This watch has a bright yellow dial and polished stainless steel case and bracelet, and really looks attractive in the sun or at dinner or any place you want to wear it. Why would you want to get an inexpensive watch from Russia? A watch that many consider junk. Their words, not mine. I purchased this Vostok Kamandirskie diver's watch because I wanted to see what it was all about. In my opinion, this watch is a bit rough around the edges. The finishing is coarse, the bezel is just friction fit, flimsy bracelet, overall a watch that has a cheap feel to it. But that's sort of what it is. At $78 US, I don't expect much from this watch. However, it does keep fairly good time with an average daily accuracy of better than 8 seconds. This is another watch that I consider a beater watch. Several years ago, I wanted a pilot's watch, specifically a Flieger from one of the original 5 World War II watch manufacturers. I ended up getting the Stova Classic Flieger. However, I find that I preferred the Sinn 104 more than one of these traditional Fliegers. Hence, I sold the Stova. I still have the Sinn 104 and enjoy wearing it under many scenarios, whether in business or play situations. I love the stark appearance of the white hands and printing against that black dial. This, combined with a stainless steel bracelet, provides a very noticeable and readable dial. You know, many people have asked me how I like the Sellita 220 movement. Wouldn't I prefer a higher-end movement and watch that cost me over $1,500 US? All I can say is that this movement has performed superbly with an average daily accuracy of 3 seconds. Remember, this is not a COSC-certified watch. What more could one ask for? Another watch in my collection that falls into the sentimental category is this original grain Koa Stonewashed model. Actually, it's doubly sentimental. First, because it is a watch from Hawaii, which reminds me of a family trip we took to Maui with my parents many years ago. and because it was given to me by my 2 daughters and daughter-in-law. Accented with koa wood against a darkened steel case and bracelet, this quartz watch gives one the feeling that you are always out and surrounded by nature. Another watch that will be in my collection forever. This is an AT&T Service Anniversary watch made by Hamilton. It was given to me for 20 years of service to the Bell system. It displays the Golden Boy, one of the symbols of AT&T. I used to actually wear this watch to work a bit, but put it away for safekeeping. I brought it out several times for special occasions as it does provide nice wrist appeal. Now that I'm retired, I want to maintain all the corporate mementos I've collected over the years. None the least would be this watch. Every now and then, watch collectors will ask themselves, what is next for my watch collection? Where do I want to take my watch activities? The answer to these questions are probably as varied as the number of watch collectors. We all have our likings, aspirations, and financial means to devote to this hobby. We all also differ as to where we are in our horological journey. Despite the many assertions I've seen to a defined set of stages one takes in watch collecting, I believe we all follow our own path with unique destinations. So I can't tell you what you should do next. My hope is that by seeing my collection and the videos I published that chronicle my experience in watches and content from other watch enthusiasts, you will expand your thinkings as to what your next steps might be. For me, as you might have guessed, I'm seriously considering an upgrade from my Zelos Horizons Office GMT to one of the Traveler's GMT watches I surveyed in my recent video. Beyond that, I simply want to experience more and more watches. I'm sure that in doing so, I will find yet another watch to add to my collection. For those interested in GMT watches, here's the video where I surveyed 10 Traveler's GMT watches. If you're more interested in repairing or modding watches, you may want to check out this playlist or to follow the long journey I took in restoring my 100-year-old Patek Philippe watch. Watch this playlist. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.